When I figured out that the point of some meditation is concentration rather than zoning out, really opened up the possibilities for me in a lot of ways, and I really enjoy concentrating on my breath, as we've talked about ad nauseum, right? Tonight I did a pretty traditional one for me, which is focusing on just double the out than the in, and I find that as I've trained this pattern for myself, when I come into a resting period, that I immediately flip onto this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3. It's very calm and restful, rather than my mind spinning on some thought or plan or event. It goes to a very boring thing, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. I prefer it. And I find that if I focus on my breath in that manner, I can really reset myself in moments of my existence. And if I start expanding it, so I immediately go to a 4-8, which when I first began this practice, I was not able to do. So I would be inhaling for a 4, out for an 8. When I first began this practice, when I'd be worked up in my day-to-day, I could not hold for 8 seconds out. Not 8 like Om 1, Om 2, Om 3, Om 4, Om 5, Om 6, Om 7, Om 8. My nervous system was just too worked up. And so the rule that I gave myself, because these are all thought experiments and games in our own mind, is that my in-breath had to match the out. So if I was only capable of doing 4 out, Om 1, Om 2, Om 3, Om 4, I was only allowed to do 2 in, even though I wanted to maybe do big. It's natural for the body to have a vacuum process. And I began training myself in this way. Now I can expand out to 32s, beyond on the out, and it's my experience that that simple little practice through cultivation over a period of months has led to a very wonderful experience for myself of very deep meditative states when held. It's the little practices pushed out over months that become really powerful. And that's what we're talking about tonight. In more words, I guess, than that. Hey, Mr. William, do you know where my cell phone is by any chance? Unless you covered it up with your thing. It is on the harmonium. Wonderful. Yay! Affirmation and denial. Cultivating the garden of your mind. If you have been with us, we are working our way through Jungian shadow work. We began with William giving us a wonderful introduction to what this concept is, what it looks like in our life, and he carried it to a wonderful Sunday talk I hope you were at. If you don't come on Sundays, it was even a further explanation of his talk on Wednesday and was quite enlivening. We then, last week, if you were here, talked about the topic of noting and using it as a tool for those shadows we are encountering in our work. We have shadows. What are the shadows and how do we identify the shadows? How do we train ourselves to stay around long enough to be able to identify what the shadows are and do the appropriate work for them? I brought forward noting as one concept and topic. There are many. Jung explicitly refers to 3 different methodologies: visualization, journaling, and gentle inquiry. Noting in my mindfulness talk last week was a more in-depth look of gentle inquiry. This week we're talking about unity, which is what we are. And unity has its own process in dealing with shadow and what we encounter inside of our own mental space. Unity is not a church that is traditional. It is a new thought movement that has pushed forward into a congregation. This new thought movement, founded in the 1800s by the Fillmores, had some other players involved, Quimby and Caddy and other people, truly, in my belief, began about 7,000 years ago with the Buddha, got carried forward into Socrates and Plato. Mind comes before form. Got carried forward in the transcendentalists, which then got extricated or pushed out. It's a good word. Into New Thought after the healing of Myrtle Fillmore. Primarily, I mean, there was other healings involved, but the mind coming before form turns out is a very powerful thing inside of your own existence if you cultivate it and train it in the right way. And it was being used for beautiful healing movements in the 1800s, where people were really finding relief from different pains. And multiple large spiritual paths were founded from this. We are talking about unity. H. Emily Caddy. I'm start covering my stuff up over here. Let me see. I've got some books. Wonderful woman. Incredible, incredible things. Lessons in Truth. Really, really good read. How I Use Truth. And God, a Present Help. So she was the framework for this Western concept of denial and affirmation that Fillmore grabbed onto. She came a little earlier. And she explains our ability. Let me go down here so I can see where my notes are. Now I have to read up there. As releasing the power of appearances and actually aligning with a spiritual truth that is already present. Here's why this becomes important. In order for this to be relevant, we need to come to terms with the fact that we are a walking sliver of divinity. We need to claim our own divine inheritance, and we need to practice a pathway to cultivate that divine inheritance. Caddy was talking about some pretty crazy ideas in those days. Wonderful woman leading the way. Next, we have Charles Fillmore. I really enjoy Charles Fillmore. If you have not read Charles Fillmore, he is an expansive writer. He really dives into subjects with great depth and veracity and speaks in a very, I enjoy, fun, informal way and talks about exactly what Caddy was discussing and the transcendentalists were talking about and the Hindus were talking about, which is we are a sliver of divinity, and the Fillmores call it an inborn Christ self. And if you go back to the New Testament and read it with a lens, as per these teachings, it is our belief that Jesus was talking about the inborn Christ self. Jesus, the way shower. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Buddha. Thank you, Gandhi. Thank you for all these amazing, amazing people. Fillmore started systemizing a practice for this. He was a very business-minded individual and started actually creating a framework for going through the affirmation process. So it's denials, clearing the mental field, remove what is unlike truth. Affirmation, aligning through the divine mind with spiritual law. This is, if you've been on a talk to me before, we get into discussing the difference between the heart mind and the body mind, or intuition and intellect. These are concepts. This is the divine mind versus the standard mind of man. And being able to cultivate and align with that divine mind allows us to use that mind in affirmation and denial to what they say is, and I say, a very good healing effect in our own existence. So it continues through to be negating the false and affirming. Next, we have Myrtle Fillmore. So this is the embodied approach. If you don't know who Myrtle Fillmore is and you're sitting inside of a unity congregation, you should read one of her books. She has multiple of them, which I really enjoy. Healing Letters, absolutely wonderful short read. And How to Let God Help You. Myrtle Fillmore had a chronic, life-threatening disease. Tuberculosis, was it? Yes. And healed herself through the power of thought. And then began teaching people how to do it. She wasn't making a system, though. Charles made the system. Myrtle was experiencing it. Myrtle was feeling it. Myrtle was a beautiful person and soul. And so, once again, If you are resonating with anything I'm talking about as we go along in this, look into Myrtle Fillmore. She's an absolutely wonderful person and really the reason why we're all sitting here. So the chemical shift in consciousness, and if you want to zoom out and get away from the theology of the concept because you don't want to talk about being divine or God or anything else, going through and using affirmations and denials in a psychotherapy model will allow you to release different chemicals inside of your system that allow for somatic release, experience, and healing. We can produce oxytocin rather than cortisol. We can use our mind to produce an internal environment which reflects physically. It's proven. And we can practice it. It just takes practice. So going first into this, we need to understand what denial is, right? It can get really tricky with what we're talking about. It removes the power we're assigned to. So it's not suppressing or pretending that a thing doesn't exist. Denial is not saying my leg didn't get cut off. Denial is saying that doesn't make me not whole, I swear. Do you understand the difference? Denial is not saying I don't have cancer. It changes my relationship to it. And there's healing there. If you change your relationship to the event, there's healing there. And there's healing beyond. There are circumstances where there are physical healings which occur. I'm saying there's multiple levels, and we can definitely accomplish a mental healing on a consistent basis using denial and affirmation as a consistent process. It creates inner space so spiritual truth can come forward. We live in fear in moments. We allow these thought processes, these little synapses in our brain to create stories, which we then model our life after, model our behavior after, model our internal dialogue after. We can deny the story and affirm the moment. It's the first step to mentally clearing before an affirmation. Denial is what comes after the mindfulness. So William starts, and there's shadows. There's shadows around here. Oh, God, there's shadows. Okay. How do we identify the shadows? We get a flashlight, mindfulness, some tool or another, visualization, journaling. Gain the flashlight, shine it on the shadow. Once we identify the shadow, we deny the shadow. I see that. I see the shadow, and I am not that shadow. I am not anger. I'm maybe in this moment, but it's a passing thing, right? We use it to our advantage as a step in the process. This fear has no ultimate power over my life. This condition cannot separate me from my wholeness. This belief does not define who I am, and this anger cannot override my clarity. I'm not pushing the frickin' button today. I'm not pushing it. This limitation has no authority in my consciousness. This sadness is valid but does not own my destiny. This doubt does not block my connection to the divine. These are just examples. When we identify the shadow, we maybe have some of these in our pocket. I left sheets out in the front if you'd like to take some with some examples on them. But we begin creating an internal environment where we are using our thought processes actively. That's called consciousness. We are using our consciousness to have a metaphysical result, to gain clarity in our existence. And then we follow it up with an affirmation. I'm guided by the wisdom within. Peace fills my mind and heart. Love expresses through me now. Say them. It feels freaking wonderful. I can feel it in my chest as I go through. What I love so much about these processes is they're not hard. They're just hard to remember. Really. More affirmations. I am here. I am present. I am grounded. Divine life is my life, and wholeness is my nature, and well-being is my natural state. I am a loving father. I am capable. I will be okay. I have been here before. I am not going to react to my anger. Bring it into daily life. It's where it matters. We see the shadows. We gain the mindfulness from the practice and the meditation and the prayer. We've been doing our stuff. And now we see them. Do we remember to do it? Do we take a moment to deny and affirm? I have one I love. I currently live like 2 blocks away from where me and my ex, who's the mother of my daughter, were together for like the beginning part of our relationship. Like I drive past the house like every day. We fought there. We were younger. We fought there. We yelled there. There was 3 a.m. yelling there. You know, it was a thing. And I drive past that house every day. And when I drive past that house, those thoughts come up. And I say, I deny that that is my existence right now. I deny that those events dictate who I am. I deny that I'm allowing those to dictate my actions, my feelings, or my thoughts in this existence. And I affirm that I'm a sovereign being. I affirm that I have grown. I affirm health. I affirm good relationship with that person. I affirm love for that person. I affirm that I am okay. I do that in my car by myself. How is your life different if you do that every moment something crappy comes up? There stops being so much crappy stuff. It's not hard to do, it's just hard to remember. But if we have little reminders as you go around, you can begin cultivating an existence. We can begin cultivating an existence that you are actively removing the negative parts of. It's a beautiful, beautiful, powerful process. But it starts with being concentrated enough to be noting that there's something coming up. Why am I feeling like icky while the house. It's the freaking house. Oh, and then I remember this, and then I remember this. And there's these little train thoughts in the background that go on. And what I realized as I went through my process of really opening up with these affirmations was, as I have discussed previously in other talks, there are a lot of automatic systems hiding. And this is a way to begin unwinding them lovingly, so lovingly. This isn't a hard process. This is you being so kind to yourself, so sweet to yourself in every way that you can. Because self-love is where this begins. Like, we take care of ourselves. And this is very loving. If we begin working with that prayer process, the affirmation process, we can then carry that into affirmative prayer, which is using those same affirmations on a more pointed and poignant basis in order to gain greater healing in our own existence, whether it be internal, external, or in our relations, and greater healing in our community if you're willing to work with others. A note before we end and go to a Q&A, and I hope some people have questions. This is a really fun topic to talk about. But Unity defines this as chemicalization. It's an interesting term. It's from the late 1800s. I've had actual teachers in classes kind of skip the term because it's just so awkward of a term, really. But what they're discussing is that when there's a thing that can occur, which is when we focus on something, it grows. If you've been following along with me, this would relate last week to me discussing that we need to make certain that we are noting pleasant as well as unpleasant experiences. As if we are going about noting our experience, it can become a habit to note only the unpleasant experience and not note the pleasant experience because we want the unpleasant one to go away. It is a similar process which occurs with affirmations and denials. It doesn't always happen, but it can happen, and it is important to note as members of our congregation that if you are doing this work in young shadow work or with affirmations and denials, if you begin focusing on something, it can begin getting stronger. It does not mean you're not doing the good work. It's most likely working, which is why it's getting stronger. And you have to keep your head down and the faith and join community and love and keep going and know that on the hard side of that is the freedom you've been searching for. So it's worth talking about because this isn't sunshine and rainbows. The path to enlightenment is not paved in fields of flowers. But there are many of them. There's a lot. There's a lot. Weed, water, grow. This is my little concept I came up with. It's not really anything special. We're all repeating something that's been used before. Our internal experience is a garden. It can be tended and trained like a garden. It can be trained and tended like a garden. Denials are weeding our garden. Affirmations are watering our garden. We choose what grows. If we use our mindfulness and note things appearing, we rip the weeds. And when we have good experiences, we cultivate that. I want to be more loving, more compassionate, a better father, more service. Water that. Spend the energy there. Affirm what we love that makes us happy and joyful. It just takes daily tending. Any gardener will tell you, and if you've gardened, you know it, the weeds do not stop. You can spray chemicals on them. A lot of us humans do, use lots of chemicals to try to make the weeds stop. But they don't. You have to do the daily practice. But if you're a good gardener and you go along, it becomes very easy. You've done the hard work, right? And then you're just cultivating and cultivating. There's a momentum which occurs. It's true. An actual momentum. It feels very hard at first, and then you begin going downhill, and it starts to feel actually easier than it did previously. It's the same with the gardening process. This is a threefold manifestation in my experience and belief. We have the beautiful light, Christ light, shining, the one divine presence of all creativity, shining directly through our individualized filters, which are personifying in a mental and physical experience, which are connected as one. The physical manifestations of these lessons is a very valid place to learn them, in order that we can begin cultivating an internal mental experience, which then transfers to an internal spiritual experience, which then transfers to freedom from some of the bull crap that we deal with on a daily basis. It starts wherever we meet it. It's really hard to be simple, especially with cell phones and movies and airplanes. But there's freedom there. It's not renunciation, it's non-addiction. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate being able to talk to you about this subject, and I hope some of you have some questions. So if you do, raise some hands, and we'll make sure to get you a microphone. But thank you. You're welcome. Cheers. I think it's Platform 1, maybe? No one has any questions about denials and affirmations? Oh, yeah, please. Or commentary, yeah. You're welcome.
I'm wondering if, so denial, it's hard because we think of denial being denied.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're still acknowledging it,
Mm-hmm.
but we're just not attaching to it?
Yes.
Is that more like we're not identifying with it? So I think about like meditation. When I first started, I thought like I can't have thoughts come in, right? So I'm like ending out, right? And I'm being
Yes.
self-deprecating because I'm like, there goes again.
Darn thinking.
But I think just in my path recently, I've been reading The Power of Now, and very much so that's kind of that like non-identification.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see it, you can witness it, you just know that it doesn't define you.
Yes.
And you're not attached to that as your
Yes. Yes.
So is that the same thing as denying?
Yes, it's not the exact same thing, but it's how I actually practice denial. Does that make sense? So realize that I am here on the third week. We're talking about specific unity principles. So I'm using verbiage which is specific to unity and their principles. So the concept of denial, in my belief, connects to the same principle, which is saying for unity, they believe I am one with the Christ light. I am a sliver of divinity. For the yogas, they say I am one with Brahman. I am Atman. I am, straight through, all through the lotus. Or you go to Buddha, who does not believe in eternal. He believes that the semi-eternal, thus the Brahman, does exist, but there's state beyond. That is topping of the non-self, and I practice non-self. It's my experience that there is a tremendous amount of freedom in non-identification through exactly what you're discussing. So I use denial as, I'm not that. There's no way I'm anger, because anger is just a passing phenomenon. It's a sensation and emotion. It's a visitor, and it's going to go on its way. That is how I actively use denial. Yes.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, and then I think, just to add to that, if this makes sense, but one of the things in the Power of Now, he talks a lot about, you are not your thoughts, you are not your feelings.
Yes.
You witness those. And so, part of that practice is just witnessing. So you can witness your anger, you can
Yes.
witness, right? So you can't be that and witness it, right? So that's like a beautiful way to kind of separate and look out, to be able to see perspective-wise, like, I am not this because I can witness myself.
Yes. Yep. That's a great lens to use.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. You're so welcome. The witness is, so in the different methodologies, the turning yourself into the witness role puts you on the fast track to oneness, which puts you on the fast track to release from suffering, because you are not so entangled with your day-to-day affairs. In relation to the Power of Now and what you're discussing, in my experience with those different practices, it really allows you to be in a position of equanimity, and to start looking at trying to identify, like, there is no mind. Like, what is the experience? And that ties over into the identifying aggregates and the hindrances, if you wanted to dive in deeper on that subject. Regardless, it's a fun practice to begin looking for the mind. And if you're witnessing the mind, and you're witnessing anger, and you're witnessing these things which are not attached to your experience, what are they? What is it? And there are practices and contemplations to dig deeper into that concept and further levels of freedom from day-to-day suffering. Yeah. Anyone else? No? Wonderful.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
River?
It's going to be a really loosely formed question.
Sure.
I've been listening to a lot of Ram Dass.
Sure, I love Ram Dass.
Recently.
Mhm.
And in one of them, he was speaking in regards to suffering, and that trying to stop suffering, trying to stop all suffering in your life is like trying to stop a river. It's not going to. It's going to just come out in different kinds of ways. And so I guess I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate both of these paths at the same time. That, like, a certain amount of suffering is necessary, and I feel in my life that a certain amount of suffering has been necessary for me to be able to to get to this point. And like how much, and this is probably just going to be a really personal question that I'll have to answer on my own, is like how much suffering is necessary, and is this something that allows us to, the tool of denial and affirmations allows us to feel the right amount of suffering and then move past it, or just not attached to it? I don't think any of this was really a question. I think I just wanted
I can comment on it if you like, yeah.
suffering. I just wanted to really process that.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's definitely tricky. Yeah.
I think more people should be processing out loud during this
Yeah.
section.
Suffering is really tricky. So with relation to Ram Dass and his talks, I would have to listen to the exact talk to know what he was referencing, because he can be a little specific. But in relation to suffering always occurring, yes, to a degree. So that's what you call dukkha. So even if you eradicate and you get everything in your life perfectly and you've gotten rid of most of the mental hindrances and you're not like attached to anger and aversion, you don't act like a bum, you're not lazy and you're just a good person and everything's great. You still have to do stuff. You have to make yourself food, you have to take poops, you have to take showers, you have to do your yoga, you have to exist, you're in physical form. So here in physical form, a certain level of suffering has to exist, as in you are embodied, right? Doing time in a body, as your man likes to talk about. As you are embodied, you can be free of that because of how you relate to it, right? And so that's the thing. The ending of suffering is not actually through going through suffering, it's through ending craving. So the ending of suffering is across the river of desire. And if you eradicate craving and desire, you eradicate your suffering. And you exist in a place of equanimity. The issue is most of us go backwards. We don't know that, right? And it's a really hard practice to go the other way. And there's ways to do it. There's ways to do it. It's my lived experience that I suffer only as much as I'm not willing to accept things. And so the opposite of suffering is acceptance. And one of the beautiful things that if you're cultivating a practice, journaling, visualizations, and repeated meditations, if you notice the suffering, you know where to work. That is what you are not accepting. That is what you are holding on to. Like, you know exactly where to go. If something hurts really bad, you know where to go. And so it's just being willing to open to it. Doing a lot of work that's making you willing to open. Because it hurts. It's scary to go into pain. You can practice this during physical meditation, as I was talking about, projector light through the filters. If you're sitting in meditation and you're like, I need to move, I hurt. No. What is going on? What is happening in my body? Maybe go see, like, what, is it like a sharp pain in my knee? Is it like a dull, is it in my knee? Or is it like going, does it last long? What is going on? Like, why do I not like this so much? Maybe last 15 seconds, whatever, cancel out. Next moment, come back. Practice, you can get to a point for an hour, you're screaming and you're watching it, like investigating it, and it moves up and down your leg, and it's never one exact spot. And it like comes and it goes, and for 15 minutes it doesn't hurt at all, and then it's back again, but you noticed it, you attached to it, and it begins to be this very dynamic physical meditative experience. That somatically has like a result, which then plays over into exactly what you're talking about. The physical manifestation and working with it in the meditation begins to unlock the ability to manipulate it mentally. So when you're dealing with suffering on a mental experience, you can go, what's that? What is that? Is it a sharp pain in my knee, or is it, it's shame? Why do I have shame right now? Denial, affirmation. But if we attach to the suffering so quickly that we're inside of the experience, it becomes difficult to apply denial and affirmation because you're experiencing suffering. Does that make sense?
Yes, and we'll talk about this.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. What's up?
Yeah. Something earlier when we were talking about Emily Cady,
Mm-hmm.
the New Thought movement.
Yep.
And how the New Thought movement, none of those were new thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were old thoughts that go back to the Vedics, the Buddhists, and it was just that point in time where they could start talking about it, because if at one time in human history, if you said that I'm part of the divine and my thoughts have power, you would be burned.
100%.
And those thoughts were considered a cult. And there are people who gave their lives to preserve those teachings. And it's just that unity is just one branch of the New Thought movement who resurrected these teachings that are as old as the Vedics and the Buddhists and the Hermetics. But this is just the branch we have now. And when they were presenting these thoughts, they got a lot of backlash at that time because they were right in the Bible Belt. But if you could just talk about that a little bit, we're reading these books from these people who've had these
Yeah.
experiences, but the actual truths they're speaking of were way older than even the New Thought movement.
Oh, yeah, very, very old. So when it comes to the backlash, I mean, we get backlash today about this. It's some pretty interesting things if you actually start explaining what I'm saying here, and I will explicitly. People have a hard... it is difficult for people to perceive an internal divine experience rather than an external God. This got brought back to the logic aspect in the Socrates and Plato's area, where they were not looking at this theologically. They were looking at this as purely a thought experiment. And the thought experiment is that mind comes before form. Everything in our existence comes out of the mind. And without the mind, the existence does not occur. You are creating your own reality. Everybody will see the end of the world the day that they die. Right? And so that was the theological that occurred, and that sparked the transcendentalists. Right? The transcendentalists were a movement of, I think it was, I can't remember the names, was a movement of writers and poets and just large social figures who came forward and began saying the exact same thing in the 17 and 1800s and began pushing forward this concept of mind comes before form and the fact that your thoughts have power over your reality. Fillmore got turned on to this and then put it in conjunction with Eastern religion. So in the 1800s, Fillmore got introduced to Krishna consciousness, Krishna Christ consciousness, and the Hinduisms and the Brahmins and all of that. So this original thought of mind coming before form, as far as that I can see, came about in Pali and Sanskrit